How are you, John?
I'm very well, thank you, Darcy, and thanks for having me back on the show. I've been really enjoying your podcast. You get some very interesting guests.
Likewise. Recently, New Zealand was rated the third safest country in the world by the Global Peace Index. And with the active investor plus visa changes recently, and we'll dig into that. What are your general views, though, just around, I guess, the idea of people putting in hedges around where they live and their portfolios at the same time?
If you actually get there, if you actually create something worth securing, then you've got the next problem is how do I hang on to it? And what we're seeing worldwide is a move towards more taxation, more taxes on property, more taxes on income. And so that's a problem in itself. Then the next is, where do you actually want to be? I know during COVID, a friend of mine, he was actually a Canadian guy in the South Island. He sold up, took his family to Mexico because he physically felt he had more freedom there. They didn't have the lockdowns. You know, they had a lot more freedom to move around. From a physical security point of view, I think New Zealand is like the ultimate security blanket for anxious millionaires, right? We're a long way away. It's nice and quiet. It's very safe. And if you can get in now, spend your time, build your $5, $10, $15, $20 million home with beautiful view over a lake and mountains, bring in your container. What do they call that thing? You can get those containers in, you can put it in the ground. That's what I think the government is actually selling, right? They're talking about homes. Some people are already getting upset about the idea of foreigners coming in and buying up our homes. But there's a couple things there. One is that last year, New Zealand sold, in the whole country, we sold 152 homes worth more than $5 million. So it's a very small number of homes that are included in this.
So if you have 5.9 million US dollars, and I appreciate this is probably not like the everyday person's portfolio, right? So it's going to be a sliver of the world's population. But if you had 5.9 million US dollars, that works out to be around about 10 million New Zealand dollars. You'd qualify under the active investor plus visa. You don't need to learn English. You can buy a property in New Zealand for $5 million plus, and in order to qualify, you have to invest $5 million in approved investments. You only need to keep those investments for 3 years. You can liquidate them, do what you want with it. You only need to spend 21 days a year. I'm not quite sure if I mentioned you don't need to learn English, but a lot of people on the left will say, that's terrible, you're selling all our homes, you're making it harder for those to get into the market. Some of those on the right are thinking, awesome, we've got more capital coming in, that will trickle down and create more stuff. Do you think it'll actually move the needle in any way material?
No, I don't. In fact, I think the whole thing reeks of desperation. It's really like, we're running out of ideas, we're broke, we need some cash, can you please come in? And there is more to it than that, all right? Because I'd like to think that people who have done well in their own country, done well financially, they've built a business, they've been successful. I mean, it depends how you look at it, right? So on the left, they think that if someone made money, they took it from someone else, right? There's this finite view of the world. So there are 8 pieces of pizza, and I took 2, so there's only 6 left. I like to look at it from the other side, from the abundance point of view, and go, why don't we make a bigger pizza, right? Maybe some of these guys who are successful, have made a lot of money in their own country, maybe they'll come into New Zealand with a new recipe, right? And then we can go and get some flour and, we can make heaps of pizza. You can get anything that you want if you just help enough other people get what they want. I think that's a Zig Ziglar quote, but it's true in my life. If you want to get something, you've just got to add value, right? Help other people and you get something back. Now, some of these people are going to be smart, successful, organized people who they can bring their ideas to New Zealand, and not just for business. I mean, on the one side, yes, hopefully, if you're going to spend $5, $10, $15, $20 million building a beautiful home, there'll be some innovation in there, right? There'll be perhaps more sustainability around. They'll put in solar panels and batteries and maybe collect the water and do all kinds of things like that, like I did myself when I built my passive solar home that I'm living in. But they also might have ideas about how to help local charities, how to maybe to raise awareness, how to raise money. And I mean, I've met wealthy people in New Zealand and around the world, and yes, you get the arrogant, obnoxious ones, but you also get a lot of very thoughtful people who sort of come to the top of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? And they're now looking for something more, something different, some way of giving back, a sense of belonging, you know, a way to fit into the community. So while I don't think it's necessarily going to bring a lot of money to the country, I do think there's a net benefit for New Zealand overall.
So it would be great if it was more significant, though, would be all you're saying, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, 300 people have applied so far, approximately. I was speaking to a money manager yesterday, and he helped a number of foreigners apply. So some of those people with the 300. A problem that they are having is that the 5 million category, you have to invest directly into businesses or into authorized managed funds. Now, part of the problem is that private equity in New Zealand is quite illiquid and can be quite risky. And some of the managed funds that have been thrown together have literally been thrown together, right? So there's just some stuff thrown in there and it's like, here, you can buy this. So they're kind of, a few of them are like, yeah, that doesn't, you know, that's not really going to work for us. The 10 million category, yes, you can invest in bonds and you can invest in shares. So it's a bit more flexibility, but it's also a lot more money. So even just from the settings themselves, it's not easy, right? It's not just, hey, just come in, right? It comes down to the detail. It is really, really hard to do things in New Zealand today. I mean, anybody listening would know that. Anybody in business, doesn't matter what business you're in, there's so much red tape, so many forms to fill in. It's just so complex. So changing rules like this, it's the devil's in the detail.
Right. It's great in theory, but they'll hit some roadblocks because there's roadblocks that need to be taken down for it to really, you know, do more than just political window dressing, perhaps. I wonder also whether or not this does change the dynamics with the property market in New Zealand. Will it create more buyer demand at that $5 million plus category? And could that even be an interesting strategy for those that want to invest now in the higher value homes anywhere close to that $5 million mark? Because with the next property bull market, everything will rise. And I'm just guessing there's a bit of a slipstream that kicks in at that 5 mil mark if there is a lot of demand. But again, you don't think there's going to be a lot of demand, even though there's not a lot of supply with property in that category. You don't think there's going to be a sufficient demand to actually move the needle there?
If I want to buy, living in New Zealand, if I want to buy a holiday home in Noosa, I have to pay an 8% foreign buyer levy. Okay? As an Australian or Singaporean buying in New Zealand, you pay nothing. There has been no mention of foreign buyer levies on these $5 million homes. And my question is, why not? Right? If you've got the capacity to come in and drop 10 million in shares and you put another 10 million to build a house, why should you not pay an entry fee to the nightclub, New Zealand, pay your $20 and you can come in? You know, It's something that you pay in a lot of other countries. Like I said, New Zealanders have to pay it in Australia. Each state, it's a little bit different. I know Queensland's 8% because I found it out when I made an offer on a property. But so why are we not charging a fee? And I think that would also appease a lot of people who are worried about, you know, foreigners coming in and buying up their properties and what effect will it have? Is there a trickle-down effect? Will it make cheaper homes more expensive? So and I'm not about taxes. I don't like more taxes, right? Because I just think governments waste whatever tax they bring in. But what if we could charge that foreign buyer levy and charge it to everybody, right? The Australians, the Singaporeans, everyone, and go, right, this is the foreign buyer levy money, and we're going to use it to remove GST on food. Cost of living is a massive issue in New Zealand, and the people who are affected most are the poor, the working poor. And when they spend most of their income on food and clothing and shelter and transport, so rent, cars and food. Why do we have GST on food? Many countries don't, right? On food and children's clothing, for example. So I'm just trying to throw another idea out there because we seem to be running out of ideas, right?
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense. And I know what you're saying around tax. Like I get frustrated when I see people always calling for more tax. If you're reaching for the tax lever as a suggestion every time you see a problem, it says a lot about how your brain has been wired for you, in my view. Whereas in the new world that we're in, where increasingly it feels like countries are going to be taking care more of themselves and playing a little less free trade, like whatever is left of that within the rest of the world, kind of makes sense. If we're going to be imposing new tax, we do it to other citizens of other countries trying to get something out of our own country and a little less
Yes.
out of our own citizens. And
Yes.
I'm not sure if that idea will catch on, though. What do you think? Do you think that we're just not there
Well,
yet
look,
to figure that out?
well, the reason I created that video the other day is because I'm very much about fairness, right? So whatever the rules are, they should apply to both parties. So why is it? And you know, if I want to buy that $3 million home in Noosa, 3 million Australian dollars, I pay $158,000 stamp duty and $240,000 foreign buyer duty, then a 3% land tax per annum. When they buy here, they pay nothing. We can change that. Why can't we change that? Just make it fair.
Yeah. No, I totally agree.
That's all I'm saying. And then maybe we could do something with that money, like, for example, removing GST off food. We should remove GST off food anyway. It's just unfair. I mean, that's unfair too, isn't it? I mean, people who are struggling to put food on the table, why should they be paying a goods and services tax, basically a luxury tax, on lettuce? I mean, come on.
Yeah, no comment. But yeah, no, I totally agree. A lot of the tax argument kind of feels like you're driving in the minivan and the kids are misbehaving in the back. Who are you going to knock around the head a little bit? Not that you're allowed to do that, of course. You're gonna reach the people that are closest to you, right? When governments get grabby, they always go for those that are closest, those that are easiest to reach. Unfortunately, it's the middle class, it's the lower class, and it's the people in their own countries, and they're increasingly reluctant to kind of think about this from a national perspective in a global context. Well, we have our biggest trading partner in the East. We have our security partner, what should be our security partner in the West. Yet I'm still not entirely sure which way New Zealand will go. Will we choose to go with who buys our milk? Will we go with those that are potentially going to protect our borders? Because we sure as hell can't.
I'll go with who I share a culture with. I've spent a lot of time in the States. I like Americans. They have a lot of problems, but not as many as you would think if you actually spend time there. You know, there are a lot of fantastic places to visit, to live in the US. It's not all the things you see on television. So, and I think America is still the growth engine of the world, right? Where is the innovation going to come from? I mean, they're driving robotics and all of this information technology that's coming. This is the way things are going, and America's going to be leading it. I mean, China, yeah, they've done a lot of great things, but they also do a lot of copying. There's a lot of control. I wouldn't want more Chinese influence in New Zealand. We've lost enough freedoms already.
Which way do you think most everyday New Zealanders would go then?
I really don't know. But one thing I do know, one thing I would like to raise actually, and there's probably a little bit risky here, but when people look at these wealthy foreigners who we're trying to attract in, right, to invest, bring some money and invest it, the whole point of them being allowed to buy a home is that if you've got $100 million, you don't want to rent a house in New Zealand, right? And what kind of house are you going to be able to rent anyway, right? It just doesn't work. So they put in their 10 million, maybe they spend another 10 million. They're only going to be in the country for a certain amount of time a year because there's nothing going on here. So it's a nice place to visit. It's a nice place to go tramping, go to the lake, hang out with nice people. But where are you going to go in New Zealand in a private jet? I mean, you can fly to Sydney. That'll cost you an absolute fortune. You won't see anything along the way. You won't have any fun, or maybe to Fiji. You can't get around. We're too far away. So my point is that we're not going to be overrun by these guys. The thing that we should be thinking about is our immigration settings, right? Because the country that we have followed on a lot of things, the UK, is going to hell in a handbasket, all right? And I was just recently in the UK. Central London, fine. Knightsbridge, Mayfair, Kensington, beautiful, right? I think I looked at a 4-bedroom apartment, about 60 million New Zealand dollars, you know, like just on a board. I didn't go and visit it. I'm going to waste their time. But, I mean, there's so much money there. Lots of Middle Eastern people there. A lot of money coming in from the Middle East, right? But then you go out of the UK, even Oxford, with its, you know, amazing university, the train station was third world. It's just run down, dirty, just horrible. The UK is struggling. I think instead of worrying about the rich, we've got to watch out for the rich, worry about who are we actually bringing to New Zealand? What are our immigration settings? You know, I mean, I would be more concerned about that, about allowing lots and lots of people to come in who don't share our culture, don't share the our way of life, don't want to assimilate, want to take what they can get from our system. That's something that I would be more concerned about than 50 wealthy people spending a whole lot of money on a house. And one of the points I wanted to make about those guys, they're away all the time. Someone's got to look after the house. You can't leave a house shut up for months on end. You've got to open it up. You've got to clean it. You've got to do gardens. You've got to mow lawns. There'll be sparkies and plumbers and security guards and landscaping. And, they'll be creating a lot of work for people. I don't think we need to worry about them, but I do think we need to think about our immigration.
Interesting. And I think a lot of your concerns that you raised there are probably mirrored by a lot of people living in countries like Australia, Canada, the US, and UK. Funnily enough, all Five Eyes countries. Where do you think a lot of this immigration policy and the direction that we seem to be going in, where do you think that actually comes from? I dare you to go there.
I think a lot of people would like to know the answer to that. What I do know is that the politicians do not seem to be working for us. And it's in any of the woke countries. You can call them the Five Eyes countries, the woke countries, the English-speaking Western countries. We're all doing really stupid things. Our standard of living is just dropping off a cliff. We're getting poorer by the day, and it enables people, to get in charge that shouldn't be. There's a real risk that next year we have Labour back in, and potentially with Greens. I mean, it'll be terrible for the country, but I don't know how to solve it. But I just so often see the legislation that changes and think, why the hell are they doing that? Who is that for? Who's it going to help? And that's one thing I do like about the coalition so far. What they've been saying makes a lot of sense. The problem is, as a property developer on the ground in New Zealand today, nothing has changed.
Moving across the Tasman from New Zealand into Australia now, we have Division 296, which looks increasingly likely to be inevitable. They have a left-leaning government who believe, apparently, that by taxing the rich, you can solve all the problems. The idea is to increase their government superannuation retirement scheme tax up by another 15%, so it's 30% overall. It's a tax on unrealized gains at that 3 million plus mark. A lot of people wouldn't be concerned, thinking, well, that's not me, that'll never be me, but they're not thinking, well, what happens if there's significant performance in the markets they're invested in, and what happens if you invest over a long period of time? It will capture a lot more people in the future than the 0.5% of people now, right?
It would already capture, according to the Financial Services Council in Australia, it'll capture 500,000 people today.
Wow.
So that's already quite a few people.
And what for, though, is what I wonder, because the countries that I've seen in Europe in particular that have tried this, they all reversed it shortly afterwards after all the wealthy people left. What do you think the long-term outcome of some sort of wealth tax like that is going to be?
I think it's nasty. I think that telling people to save for their retirement and setting up the superannuation structure where they start paying in from an early age, and then they pay in more and more and they build up their wealth. It's almost like the government's going now, ha, gotcha. You fell for our trick. So I think one of the knock-on effects of this tax on superannuation in Australia is that people will reassess as to whether or not they should actually pay in, or pay in only the absolute minimum that they need to, which is a shame, because the superannuation scheme in Australia has been very successful, one of the most successful in the world. A lot of people have got, substantial balances, which means that they're not going to be reliant on the state, not reliant on other taxpayers when they retire, which is becoming more and more common in New Zealand. And as less and less people own their own home, more of them are going to retire without anything, right? So they're going to be leaning on the government to look after them in old age. So why would you bring in something like this 296 to disincentivize saving? I just see it across the board. They're trying to stop us buying investment property, and now they don't want us to invest in superannuation. It's just tax. I think the plan is, it's just, without being conspiracy theorist, it's control. If you don't have any money, you're going to do as you're told. If you do have money, then you can fight back and you can say what you think and you can argue and debate. They're pushing mum and dads out of the property investment space, then they're bringing in big companies. They'll change the tax settings to make it profitable. People like BlackRock to build these big Soviet-style multi-hundred unit apartment blocks, and nobody will own property, right? They'll just rent. Well, if you're in one of these apartments and the government of the day is paying your rent, are you likely to vote against them? Are you likely to protest against them? No, because you're reliant on them for your home. And it makes people kind of weak.
That's right. That's a good point. And I've heard you talk about this before. Like, what is rich? We have a real problem with defining that. And then we have a real problem with understanding the impacts of inflation over time and compounding returns. Like 1 million when I was young, probably same with you, John.
$1
felt like a lot of money,
million.
right? Yeah. But not anymore.
Not anymore. Not anymore. Now I'd say maybe 50 million, maybe 100 million, right? Enough. I mean, for me, you're rich if you can go to another country and buy a beautiful home, you know, set up another home and have another car and travel first class. And, you know, you don't have to worry about money. 2 million, 3 million, that's just middle class from the old days, right? Well, put it this way. When you were growing up, if you went to the house of a GP or a successful lawyer or an engineer, would you expect them to live in a nice house in a nice part of town?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
When I was young, for sure.
So today, in order to do that, you're going to spend $2 or $3 million buying that house. Yeah. So all of a sudden now you're rich. Before you were just a professional.
Yeah.
It doesn't add up.
Yeah. Again, it's like the government reaching to those that are closest rather than actually doing the hard yards and really taxing the rich. Like if you're going to tax the rich, do it properly and actually really go after the ultra high net worth people, because there is more people
Correct.
there, because it's easy to, once you have a lot of resource behind you, it's easy to accumulate more and more and more. And in fact, that is the mindset, is to keep on building your wealth once you have it. And it means that more and more resources will concentrate into fewer and fewer hands over time. And if you really want to solve the problem, that's where you go. But there's no political will to go there because of the incentive structure.
You're exactly right. You're exactly right. The ultra rich, right? Who owns all the farmland in America, or the biggest farmland owners? It's Bezos and Gates. You know, billionaires own so many assets, businesses and property and, you know, intellectual property rights, and that they almost have to keep buying, don't they? Because they've just got this cash coming in. They've got this income all the time. They need to constantly be hoovering up assets. Well, if you're worried about someone coming in and buying all your housing, those are the guys you need to look at, like BlackRock.
Yeah.
You know, not your local GP or your local lawyer. And in New Zealand, if they're super successful, right, they have their home and they have a batch and they have a nice car.
Yeah.
And they're happy. That's it. I mean, most people I know who have that, they're now playing golf. You know, we just, if anything, we should be trying to get people to try and go for that billionaire status. You know,
Yeah.
we need more people with a bit of get up and go. And unfortunately, we seem to be training people not to.
Now that we're on the topic of, you know, talking about everything that will offend anyone who wears a cardigan, I'm sure. Let's just keep going, John, right? Let's talk about Donald Trump, right? One of the things that I noticed with the media about 6 to 9 months ago in particular, and especially in the financial space, was just drawing this automatic conclusion that anything that he was behind would ultimately lead to death and destruction, and you know, your wealth will be gone. Your view in general, do you kind of feel like there is a shift that's going on in the world which is beyond the political leaders of our day, or do you kind of feel like it's just a one-off with this particular person in charge?
First of all, I don't know if you saw the number this morning, but they just revised GDP in the US up. So the US is actually doing better than people had expected. So,
Right.
and remember, Trump brought in tariffs back in 1819, and at the time,
1819?
well, I think it was around then. Yeah, 2018, 2019. Is that when?
I was going to say, he wasn't alive in 1819. What are you talking about, John?
Sorry. And at that time, you know, the commentators said that, you know, the world was going to come to an end and there were trade wars and all the rest of it. And, you know, actually Biden came along, took over, and he didn't reverse any of those tariffs that Trump brought in. He carried on with it. I don't know who's right or wrong. I mean, the problem with Trump is that it's his communication style, right? He comes across like a complete and utter nutter, and that's just the way he is. What he is doing, though, which I think is more important than the way he's doing it, is that he's the only US president for a long time that I've actually seen stand up for the United States, right? I think he genuinely wants the US to do better. I think he genuinely wants blue-collar workers assembling auto parts to have a job. Is tariffs the right way to do it? I don't know, but I think he's realized that they have to do something, because just continually relying on China to make everything that they need is not a good strategy. Yeah. I mean, COVID surely was a wake-up call for everyone that, you can't just have everything made in one or two countries. The risk is too great. So I do think there's method to his madness.
Yeah. It feels like, again, UK, Canada, US, Australia, New Zealand in particular, Five Eyes countries where it feels like in a lot of ways we're falling off a cliff in terms of quality of everything.
Yes, I agree.
We have an outlier here in the US. Yes, it's a president that everyone loves to hate. However, he is one leader who's standing up and saying, we're not going to take it. We're not going to take it anymore, to quote Twisted Sister, right, from the 80s. We're not going to take it. We're going to actually make this place better. And we're not going to tax internally so much. We're going to tax externally. We're going to use tariffs. Kind of like what you were talking about before with duties to buy properties in other countries. Don't restrict them, but just collect tax from them. That, to me, kind of feels like if we're going to have political leaders, we need to have the guts to actually put people that we might not like in charge if they're doing the right thing.
I agree completely. New Zealand for New Zealanders. Things like this Paris Accord. Look, and don't get me wrong, I want to protect New Zealand. Our marine reserves, our national parks, our fresh water. But we don't need to spend billions of dollars in Europe in order to keep New Zealand clean and green. I think there's too much greenwashing. There's too much of these meetings, everyone flying around in jets and going to meetings and spending all this money and coming up with all these agreements and, oh, look at what we have done, like, why are we putting solar panels on farmland? In New Zealand. I mean, planting trees on farms that were producing beef and sheep, and there were good local communities. There were just enough kids keeping the school running, and you have to shut everything down because we're growing trees to save the planet to meet our Paris climate accords. I think it's nonsense. I think the whole lot of it is rubbish, and we should review a lot of our international agreements because we're getting screwed. Right? As simple as that. Why is it that an Australian gets treated like a local buying a house here and I buy there and I'm a foreigner? I'm not talking about people who move there, okay. But it's just, this is only one issue that I've come across because I've dealt with it directly. How many other agreements are completely one-sided? How many other agreements have we got politicians who have known nothing about negotiation and are just being sent off overseas? I think we just get pushed around. And we have such an amazing country. We have so many resources. We've just got everything that we need. We make food for 40 million people. We should be all wealthy, right? We've got everything. We've got gas, we've got coal, we've got solar, we've got geothermal, we've got wind, we've got fish, we've just got everything we need, and we completely mismanage it. It's just a shambles. It really is. And I try and be positive, and I am a positive person. You can't be a property developer if you're not positive and a little bit mad. But I do wonder we just waste so much. We just waste so much money on stupid stuff like the Paris Climate Accord. What is the point of it?
Yeah. Well, okay. So let's bring it with that in mind. Let's bring it back down to the household. AI, artificial intelligence. It appears to be having a significant impact to a lot of businesses in terms of we as business owners can now make stuff a lot easier just by using technology. A lot of our politicians through the tax levers, a lot of our central bankers through the monetary policy levers, they will try to destroy demand so that they can manage things. And now we have a tool that can help give us assists or give small businesses an assist to build something out of nothing. Surely that's got to have a massive impact in terms of inflation, like cause deflation. What are your general views on technology-induced deflation?
So simple supply and demand. I can now do the work of a team of 3 media people, and so I can create more news content with less, so the price should be lower. Right? So I think AI will enable us to make more stuff more cheaply. So from an inflation perspective, I think it's deflationary. And what did phones do? What did computers do? What did the steam engine do? They all enabled more stuff at a lower cost base. I agree completely that, AI is going to drive down the cost of a whole lot of things. Yes, jobs will be lost, people will be displaced, but again, the steam engine, the printing press, the weaving machines, all this technology, people lost their jobs and then they found their jobs somewhere else. New jobs got created. So I don't see it all as doom and gloom. I think there will be some people who won't find another job. So I'm not saying, there's no risk there, but it also has there's a chance that AI will really help us solve some serious problems. It's just going to be so much smarter than the average human that it'll be able to work its way through all kinds of problems. I mean, I use it all the time now. I talk to it, I ask it questions, I've loaded up all my stuff, all my articles, my videos, all of my documents, anything I've written, everything is in my AI. So it's like talking to a coach, right? One-on-one, it knows my business, it knows what's going on, knows what my concerns are, and it helps me. And then if I want to do something new, and I want to say, hey, I want to start creating some AI automation apps maybe for property developers, right? How would I go about doing that? How do I pick a process that I'd like to automate and something that I could package and sell? Well, it'll show me how to do it. We'll work our way through it. I mean, the potential is massive, but I think for people who are worried about it, the best thing to do is to actually spend time with it. Actually learn about it. Be the person that can fix the AI. I remember when my very first job, and we went from the salaries calculations went from cards to computer, and I was so interested in computers. I'd already had a computer and done a little bit of like basic coding, and you had your tape deck you plugged in, and you saved things beep 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 beep.
Commodore 64.
And so I wanted to learn all about it. So I wasn't afraid about the change at all. I became someone that people asked, hey, how do you do this? And can you help me with that? I think that's really where you want to get to. I think communication skills are going to be super important. Soft skills, EQ, how to get on with people, how to listen, how to ask questions. Yeah. AI, it's going to be a long time before it can really communicate those with another human being in the same way, I think.
And from a macro, more monetary policy point of view, a lot of people are concerned about inflation coming back to life, especially if there's an increase in global liquidity, if central banks start to create more out of nothing, indirectly, of course. Like if that starts to pick up again for all sorts of reasons, are we going to see inflation? And I kind of look at AI as, well, maybe that is one of the things that could offset it by creating more supply, so that the increase in demand from more purchasing power, more dollars out there in existence, kind of creates a bit of balance. So, yeah, like maybe in the next 1 to 3 years, we might see a bit of a golden age, is my suspicion as well, whereby we get the best of both worlds, because the AI creates enough deflation to soak up all of the mess that governments create when they're doing their thing. But then eventually, I just wonder where it goes. All right, so with this last question, I want to bring it in for a landing. Precious metals like gold, silver in particular, we've seen amazing performance, especially like in the last 48 hours, new all-time highs for gold, and silver looks like it's a coiled spring ready to go. I love that sort of space. I also love digital gold, specifically Bitcoin, and I know it's really hard to find other people that kind of can see both sides of the equation here. Have you made up yet with Bitcoin, or are you still kind of on the fence with it?
I think it has a place, okay? I mean, from a number of different angles. One is that, like many, I have a complete distrust for the government, and they will just keep printing money to fund their harebrained schemes, to fund their wars, to fund all the things that if we were asked to vote, if they came to you and said, hey, we'll tax you another $10,000 each this year so that we can go and fight somewhere, well, no one would say yes, right? But with fiat currency, they can just do it. And then they just steal that money off us later through inflation. Yeah, so right. Bitcoin protects us against that, as does property and gold and art and, collectible cars and all that kind of thing. But it does it in a more, more sophisticated manner, I guess. I think there's a place for Bitcoin, but I think it's a a percentage of your portfolio. Maybe it's 1 or 2 or 3%. Like, I would be comfortable with gold at 5, maybe Bitcoin, I'd even go as far as that. But what does worry me is when I see spruikers online trying to get people to trade Bitcoin, for example. Oh, you can make all this money trading it. Really? Or put all your money into it. I mean, you shouldn't put all your money into anything. Right? You need some kind of diversification. So I guess a long-winded way of saying I'm now comfortable with having Bitcoin as a part of my portfolio.
I'll take it. I'll take it. Let's lock it in. We can work with that, John. I think it's cool. But I think it's an interesting place for me to leave it with you as well, because I kind of think that what we started with in terms of talking about New Zealand as a safe haven country, potentially for a lot of high net worth individuals to migrate to. And then we talked about government grabbies, right? Like government's getting really grabby with the amount of tax.
Really grabby.
Yeah, from those that probably can afford it the least as well. And then we talked a little bit about the geopolitical piece and the US in particular, and a bit of mindset stuff in here. So it's quite interesting to leave on this, because I think if I was to pick one statement that I hear time and time again when I listen to those, particularly in the Bitcoin community, but also a little bit in the gold space as well, is that if we do return to a sound money standard of some sort, whether it's a Bitcoin standard or a gold standard, then it immediately disarms the government's ability. It neuters the government to a certain extent, which sounds almost violent even to suggest it, but it's a completely non-violent way to restore power in the hands of everyday people. So what do you think about this statement? Can we fix the money? And if we fix the money, can we fix the world?
I think it sounds great. I think it sounds great, because we need to do something. And if we just carry on the way that we're going, I don't see a positive future for the Western world. Yeah. So
that's good.
Bitcoin or gold, maybe a combination of both.
Yeah, I agree. That's good. Not financial advice. Well, it isn't. It doesn't need to be, because it's just forms of money. It's savings advice. That's awesome.
Oh, okay.
Just might save your bacon, in my view. That's awesome. Now, John, where can people find more of what you put out there? I know you're really active on TikTok, on YouTube in particular. You also have a course. Just take a few moments, tell people where they can pick up more of what you're putting down.
Sure. Yep. TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. So they would be the main channels. And just find me with my name, John Kenel, JOHNKENEL. I have a property development course, so it's for people starting out or people have only done 1 or 2 developments and they would like to know how to go about it, how to get into it, how to do it better. I've been doing it for 21 years. I've built over 1,000 units, all medium density. So it's not a university course. This is me explaining to you what I've done, what's worked, why do I go about it in this way. So I put property development into 42 videos, 17 steps, and trying to make it easy for people. And on my social media, I'm really just trying to give advice. I talk about things I see. I talk about what I've learned and share it with other people. I've only been online for about 18 months, but I'm really enjoying it. I like it when people stop me in the street and say, "Hey, John," and we have a chat. And yeah, it's just a nice way to give back. I've learned a lot of things over the years, doing a lot of different things, and I think we should all be sharing our knowledge where we can.
100%. Well done. Thank you very much for your time today, John. We'll hopefully catch up with you again soon.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Darcy. Thanks for having me back on.